after months of questions and concerns and demands that the Trudeau government do something, they have finally decided to name a Quebec judge, a Quebec Court of Appeal judge, to lead an official public inquiry into the issue of foreign interference in Canadian elections. And that will include Chinese interference in Canadian politics. This is the judge, Marie-Josee Hogue. She'll preside over this inquiry looking into interference by China, but also Russia, Iran, possibly North Korea, into the 2019 and 2021 elections. Of course, there's a lot of concerns because there will be a federal election within the next year or two. Here's some of what the public safety minister was saying, Dominic LeBlanc, when making this announcement earlier today.
Justice Hogue will have full access to all relevant cabinet documents, as well as all other information she deems relevant for the purposes of her inquiry. In addition to examining and assessing interference by China, Russia, and other foreign state and non-state actors, Justice Hogue will also look at the flow of information to senior decision-makers, including elected officials.
All right, so what does it mean? Let's bring in CTV's Judy Trinh, who's covering the story. Let's start with the scope of this inquiry here, Judy. What do we know?
All right, Todd. What we do know is that Justice Hogue will begin her official role on September 18th, at which time she will be responsible for setting the parameters, deciding what will be public and what will happen behind closed doors. Now, I can tell you about the scope. Her mandate is to see and examine foreign interference in the 2019 and 2021 elections. So those two elections, the 43rd and the 44th. She will look at both state and non-state actors. She will examine how the diaspora was also impacted, and she will make recommendations about how national security intelligence is passed on to parliamentarians, right? How much information should be given and the thresholds for that information when Parliament is brought into the knowledge that something is going on. You'll recall that there are issues about this in regards to Conservative MP Michael Chong's case. Apparently CSIS had information but did not flag it to the top officials, top parliamentarians or leaders in this country. So she's going to look at that. The other thing that she might look at, but it is up for her to decide. I asked the question today whether or not the nomination process will be taken, she'll take a look at that. And the response from Minister LeBlanc was that it will be up to Justice Hogue to decide, because we do know that a lot of interference happens before the writ is even dropped, Todd.
You know, I know critics, Judy, for months have characterized the way the Trudeau government has handled this, or mishandled this, as they would say, as, being kind of disastrous. I mean, the opposition calling them asleep at the wheel, not taking the issue of Chinese interference seriously enough. Then a special rapporteur gets nominated earlier this year. People kind of scratching their heads. David Johnston recommends not holding a public inquiry. Then he resigns. Now we have a judge. How do you think this is all going to play out now in terms of reaction, that we now finally do have a judge and we're getting some of the contours of what this inquiry is going to look like?
What Minister LeBlanc said was that all the parties agreed on the selection of Justice Hogue. They said that they agree on the parameters. Now, what we do know, and you're going to see news releases, we already heard from the Bloc Québécois, we're going to hear from the NDP, we'll hear from the Conservatives. The opposition will take credit for pushing for this inquiry, for pushing for the selection of what is called a non-biased judge, right? Because they deemed Special Rapporteur David Johnston biased because of his close ties and history with the Trudeau family. So this is something that the opposition parties will take credit for. But what I think needs to be flagged is, despite all of the accolades and recommendations that Justice Hogue comes with, she lacks one main thing, and that is national security experience. This case is ultimately about looking at top secret documents of state actors. How did nations such as China, Iran, Russia interfere? So it's about our national security. Justice Hogue has never presided over a case that involves such a level of clearance. However, Minister LeBlanc said that according to his consultations with top litigators, not just the political parties, it was thought that fresh eyes would be good. She is obviously very well she is a very well-regarded justice who sits on the Quebec Court of Appeal. She has constitutional experience. She has civil law as well as commercial litigation. But she is lacking in that. And that could actually impact her decisions in terms of what she deems should be public and what hearings will be held behind closed doors. Todd.
Hey, you know, the other thing you just touched on, I'm curious about. The Bloc Québécois was asked whether this was the first choice, whether other judges had said thanks but no thanks. Certainly, Alain Terrien from the Bloc seemed to indicate that, in fact, there were some other choices. Maybe people declined. The fact that she does not have any national security experience or intelligence experience that we know of in terms of, you know, her role as a judge throughout her career, does that raise any issues?
You know, when you look at this case, right, there requires so many levels. Other national inquiries involving top secret clearance, let's think about Mayor Arar. That's one that comes to mind. This is going to be a case where much of it is behind closed doors, right? But at the same time, it is of such great public significance that the public is clamoring to know more information. So the question for me has been, how much of it will be transparent? Because of her lack of experience, will she perhaps hold more hearings than is necessary? Will she be willing to push for more transparency, more documents that the media can see, that we can publish, that are perhaps redacted? Will she push to release those? Those are questions that we will ask the justice when she resumes and she's made available to media. But that is a concern that I have, because this case, the excuse has always been we cannot disclose because of national security. But yet we know that this excuse has prevented a lot of relevant information, important information, from coming out. So that is what I'll be looking for.
Yeah, well said. Judy Trinh covering this breaking news from Ottawa that a judge has been named, a Quebec judge, Marie-Josee Hogue, to lead a public inquiry into the issue of Chinese foreign interference. Chinese, of course, front and center, but other countries will be part of this as well. Thank you, Judy.
You're very welcome, Todd.